Hello, and welcome to a video where my cat is awake but still being filmed consecutively. Uh, so, big stretch. This one is going to be about some of the things that I do while I'm benchmarking or testing, just looking for some confirmation, hopefully, that things actually work. I'm not benchmarking my younger brother's computer to get some sort of high score. I'm just trying to confirm that it was actually working.
And I just went updated the driver, pulled a new one, installed it, and everything was happy. If you have any issues though with like maybe the Ethernet not working or something like that, this motherboard does not have Wi-Fi built into it, and I already talked to you about how to deal with that. But if you have issues with like USB ports not working or the Ethernet port not working or audio not working, there's an install disk in the motherboard box, or you can try going to the manufacturer's website and navigating through their downloads or support section and finding your motherboard, and it's all labeled on the box, so you should be able to navigate your way through all of that to try and get their stuff installed. Just be aware, usually they bundle in some amount of useless junk with it, and if you have any questions about that, let me know, or Google the name and ask if it's and include whether or not it's important. And usually the internet will tell you if it's important or not. Okay, so I plugged the USB device in here. Basically, what I have first, I've got two things. Uh, There's Cinebench and Prime95, and Cinebench is a nifty little graphical, um, basically an image rendering stress test is what it is, but it is a relatively light way of testing your CPU and just seeing what it's capable of. And I don't have, by the time we get to Prime 95, my other PC should have downloaded or finished downloading um, a tool that will tell me what temperatures we're dealing with. And then hopefully we can monitor that as well. But for now, it's not super important. But Prime 95 is uh, the more intense of the two options. It's usually I use it to determine if an overclock on a processor is stable, and it can help determine if an overclock on RAM is stable, but it's notably less useful for that. And really, honestly, it's nearly impossible to tell if an overclock on RAM is actually stable without just using the system a lot. So that's why I'm not really trying to overclock your RAM. I'm just using a pre-approved profile. And I see that my download of the temperature monitoring tool finished, so I'm going to pop back over to that. Yeah, new USB device, I know. No, I definitely don't need to format it. Yeah, see, there it is. Idiot. Okay, so now we have that. And I have another tool that I like downloading that's to test the graphics card, and that will be a while, so we'll probably end up with a cut in here somewhere. Alright, so let's go. Start Cinebench. And there are a bunch of scores here. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. But there are a bunch of scores on the left. You're not going to be anywhere close to those. Um, Basically, we're just looking for it to not explode, is all. Ooh, there is an open GPL or OpenGL option, which will test the graphics card a little bit, though not a lot. Well, it doesn't look like it's choking, though.
Uh, I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. You get the general gist of Cinebench. This one is the CPU only test.
These boxes represents a logical core. So your processor has 12 logical cores and 6 physical ones. And this is more or less what I would expect it to look like. It's doing relatively well. But like I warned you, the other scores that I already had recorded on the left, it'll be, yeah, it got demolished by these other ones. But this is all uh, on a different processor, right? This is on my processor. So it should have done much better. But this um, is actually
I'm gonna go ahead and skip ahead again, but that the Ryzen 9 3950 versus the 3600 that I was using in this machine. The 3600 is honestly, it's a very respectable processor at time of filming. But in a workload like this, where you can leverage lots of CPU power, not just speed, but like many threads, it gets crushed by things that have more threads. So that was to be expected. The point was that the processor did not blow up when we stressed it, right? It finished the task just fine.
temperature readout somewhere in our
There's a lot of ways to get temperature readouts. This will be whichever I choose here. It looks like I may have gone with Hardware Info 64. This is just one of them. There are a whole lot of them, though.
setup. Uh, yeah, so let's clear out all of this and make sure that we're getting windows opened appropriately and not all over the top of each other. Again, this is made a little bit different since I'm operating an entire computer through a USB capture card from my main computer. All right, so if we jump back here, yeah, get this out of the way. Yeah, you saw there for a second the clocks were all ramping up because I was asking it to do things, which is predictable, right? So here we see your RAM detected. You've got 16 gigs of it. Monitor, I don't even know. It doesn't matter. Uh, so graphics card, etc. Let's just go to your sensors, and this is the real meat of it. It's been a long time since I've used this software, but this is the real meat of what we're looking for. So we can see your main GPU or graphics. This is a little chip. This is the important thing on the graphics card. It is right now fairly cool. We're not asking it to do anything, so I would hope it would be. Um, let's see. We can see there's some readouts coming from the motherboard. In general, you aren't going to have any problems with the motherboard. And the reason for that is your CPU is more than capable of being run by that motherboard. If you tried to step up the CPU, though, you might run into motherboard heat issues, so you would have to be more cognizant of your airflow. And if that's one thing that's a little bit unfortunate that I had to do here, I kind of had to cut out some of the upgrade path options that I would have liked to have left open for you. So the power supply is relatively low power, which made it inexpensive. It's still a good power supply. Like there's a site online called Johnny Guru, who really all he does is power supply reviews and analysis. Like that's his whole thing, and your power supply in your system actually ranked notably higher than several of the power supplies that I have used in the past. Yours is an 8 out of 10. So, I'm just going to take a second here and close up your windowed side panel so I'm not messing up temperatures. If I have that open, we could be drawing cool air through a component that otherwise wouldn't get any, and that wouldn't be very fair to test now, would it? Okay, so coming back, we can see a whole ton of different temperature readouts, and I'm going to actually hopefully quit out of that. Aww. I'll open it up again with sensors only, now that I've shown you some of the other stuff you can see. But there's a million different programs that do something like this. I really just went and found one of them, right? There's CPU Z, I think, is another one, or even I think Windows was eventually going to build one into this, but I don't know if they have yet. So this is a super old tool, optimizing for architecture AMD Bulldozer. That's not quite right. Yeah, so you can tell how old this is because it optimized for AMD Bulldozer when it loaded. But I also have a pretty old copy of the executable here, and that's okay. We're really just looking to make sure that you don't get crazy hot under a real load. And I'm going to double check my machine to see if I have a newer one. No, I don't. That's the only one I have. All right, fine. That's fine. So you don't have to worry about what this is too much. Just setting that to small fast Fourier transform, which hits the CPU the hardest of anything. And it detected the number of threads to run, so let's just hit it and see how hot we get. Yeah, I can hear the fan ramping up just a little bit. We've got a bunch of clocks here. Yeah, so we've maxed out the processor load, and let's see, where are we gonna CPU temperatures? So we can see 84 degrees Celsius. That is pretty toasty. That's why I'm not overclocking this for you at all. Even though I'm pretty confident I could get a stable overclock. I'm just not going to mess with it. This is already pretty warm. We're not going to get much, if any, more performance anyway. And the max is, I think, 100 degrees Celsius. It might be a little bit hotter than 100, like 105 or something, where the processor will shut off. But the thing to keep in mind is you will never, ever get something with 100% max load on all the cores of this processor. This is a synthetic load. I can't really do it with in reality. I've managed it a few times, and you definitely never will unless you like pick up video editing and you make some custom optimizations to your video editing software for your specific processor. So I would let this run, but I'm not testing stability here. I'm just making sure it doesn't get too hot, and your cooler is small, so it's not going to get any hotter than it already was. Okay, the other thing I'll do is I'll come back in here, and instead of doing the small, I'll do a blend just to test a bunch of your RAM. And a real RAM test takes forever. I'm not going to do it because I don't have any reason to suspect you'll have issues. But I'm just going to let this run for a couple minutes. And I'm not expecting any errors to come back, even though, like I said, we tweaked your RAM a little bit. It's all pre-approved profiles, and the platform that I got you for a CPU and a motherboard is fairly well.
One thing worth noting is it's pre-approved for both the RAM manufacturer, right? They're saying, hey, this RAM can run at this speed, but also for the motherboard manufacturer. So the motherboard manufacturer will maintain a list of RAM modules that are verified working with a particular motherboard. And you'll be able to find that somewhere on their website. Usually it is called a QVL list. So now you know what to look for. And I had pulled this kit of RAM off of that list for this motherboard.
Documented and fairly stable at this point. All right. Um, and I have quite a long time left on my download of the graphics card benchmark tool. So once we get done with this, I'll put that in a separate clip. Uh, so what I've run through so far, hardware info 64 for monitor.
Uh, yeah, I'm gonna skip this review a little bit so you can rewatch it yourself if you want, and I'm going to go right to graphics benchmarking. But again, I keep saying benchmarking. I'm not really benchmarking. I'm just making sure that the system is functioning properly by stressing the components a little.
Means that you have a far above average graphics card. It's just the capturing of it on my computer isn't very good because I think my capture card drivers are broken. So, we can see it's not setting itself on fire, and the side panel is closed, so this is basically a real world for you. Um, but again, this is a pretty similar idea. This is a very synthetic workload, whereas 3D Mark, the other tool I mentioned, was more of a real workload. Um, both, of course, being very graphics intensive. So, um, honestly, I'd say that this is enough. We've if this runs, it's stable. Like this is actually um, this does actually have the ability to hurt components if you're
So what I'm talking about here is if you get components really hot, not everywhere on a particular component, right? Like a GPU may have a temperature sensor, but other parts on the graphics card as a whole will not have a temperature sensor necessarily. So you won't be able to tell if everything is getting too hot. So if you have something working, a component really, really, really hard, and it just happens to not be a component that has a temperature sensor, you may never notice. Now, that's companies put temp sensors in places that make sense, in the places that usually get hot, but that is something to kind of be aware of just in regards to the overall health of your system and how that relates to airflow and what you need over it, if anything, right? So it's just something to kind of keep in mind. It's very rare for it to actually become a problem in anything a normal individual will do. But I think I am going to end this video. Thank you so much for watching this whole series. If you'd like to know anything more about computers, feel free to ask in the comments or wherever. I do a lot of computer things for a hobby, basically just because I enjoy doing it. And I also enjoy teaching other people about my hobby. So that's a great combination. Uh, anyway, it looks like it might be bath time again for my cat. So I'm going to get going, and I will see you guys in the next one.